All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Kubernetes Contributor Experience. Today is August 15th. Wow, time flies. Thanks for joining us. First things first, I just want to welcome everybody. It looks like from our attendee list here that most folks I'm familiar with. There are some names on here that I don't. Would anyone that's new to this call like to give a brief introduction about themselves? And don't feel pressured if not. All right.
Well, Paris, I'm not new, but I see a lot of faces that I actually don't know.
Okay, feel
So
free.
do you mind if I introduce myself?
Go ahead.
So my name's Chris Love. I've actually been, how do we say, absent from the community for about 4 months, working heads down actually with on a fun project with some open source around the community as well. So worked with Paris in the past with mentorship and hope to help out with that some more. So excuse the background noise. Arcade. Thanks. Appreciate it, Paris.
Yeah. And last call for any other new contributors I would like to introduce. All right. So we are going. As always, we do have a code of conduct. Please be excellent to each other. And I think we are all set for community meeting this week. Aaron, are you good? Okay, that's a thumbs up. George, do you want to add anything for community meeting stuff? Hosts, looking for hosts possibly? +1, all good? Awesome. Office hours and meet our contributors, I think, are all good as well. Just a quick announcement about meet our contributors. Next month is going to be super spicy. The first Wednesday of September, I think that's the 5th, that will be a 7-person steering committee panel at 1 p.m. Pacific. So that should be super fun. And I'm sure we're going to talk about things like the upcoming election. And Aaron and several other steering committee members have signed up for that. So if anybody has questions for them, we do compile those in the Meet Our Contributor Slack channel. But there will be a lot of marketing materials going out about that as well. So if you could just retweet, that would be awesome. I know George also has another office hours session this afternoon. So if anybody listening is ever interested in that, he's always looking for volunteers. That's a really awesome show that they do. And Bob and Jeff on the line also help out with that. All right. And does anybody else have any agenda items that they wanted to add to the list today? Feel free to add them to the Zoom chat if you can't access the doc. If not, we're going to go right into Aaron's because I see that Christoph's on the line. So it looks like, oh, by the way, Christoph, I don't know if you heard, Aaron's mic is not working. So I'm going to go ahead and I saw that head nod.
He just messaged me on Slack and said the exact same thing.
Yeah. I'm just going to go ahead and do the agenda items and then you can comment.
Yeah.
Turning on automation for all repos under the actively managed GitHub orgs. Do you want to talk to that yourself?
Yeah, this has been kind of like a long-running thing that we've wanted to do. Having consistent bots, having consistent automation, having a consistent experience wherever you're contributing has been kind of a long-running thing, and but it's just been getting to the organizing, finding out what orgs we have, getting the right permissions on them, getting the bot invited to all of them. And then now we're kind of at a place where we can start actually considering doing this. But there's a lot of pieces to our automation. So we may not do them all at the same time because different pieces of it will affect the experience of the people who are working in those repos already differently. Aaron has put out a PR for label sync. That is definitely one of the easiest, lowest hanging fruit that we have, like consistent labels among all the repos, at least the ones that we already know and already define. What it doesn't do is, like, it won't impact their experience. Like if they have extra labels that they are using for some other reason in the repo, it won't affect them at this time. So this is just like additive and making sure that the labels that we do have the right descriptions, have the right colors, and that you get that same kind of consistent feel wherever you are. After that, then things like branch protection, and making sure that the bot is doing the merges, getting approval bot, getting the life cycle, the stale closer, like all of these different things. We're going to be looking at all those different pieces and when is the right time to introduce them. Even outside of just the Kubernetes, or most of them are on for every repo in the Kubernetes org itself, but it's all the other things. So it's like the Kubernetes SIGs org, clients, CSI, and ensuring that wherever your repo lives, whichever org it lives in, you're getting that consistent experience. So I think that is a very positive thing, at least from my outlook, but it will probably take some time to work through. In particular, the biggest one that I see impacting contributor workflow is for the repos where there is a human currently clicking the merge button, transitioning them over that you don't want to do that. That's not a good idea. Let the bot do that for you and make sure the bot is like doing all the right checks for your repo, getting all that kind of testing stuff set up, that the bot knows when a PR is ready to go and is able to click the button itself, as opposed to a human having to do that. Yeah, I think that's everything on that item.
Do you? I think
check the chat and make sure I'm not missing anything from Aaron.
I'm going to be getting pushy on all of this and would appreciate guidance on slowing me down if I'm moving too fast. I trust Seablucker to do this, but wanted to make sure other folks have a say. Yeah, no, I think Seablucker is definitely on top of the time boxing. So that's good. But I told Aaron like a week. What do you think, Christoph?
I think different pieces will take different things. Like the label sync thing, I'm fine with doing that, like the minimum 72 and pushing it out. When we start tackling things like, hey, we're going to take over your repo and make a bot do the merging instead of the humans, that will probably need larger time boxes and more opportunity for people to have questions and have them answered and their concerns addressed. The other thing that I'd ask, like everybody here who's kind of in this contributor experience fold, is keep your ear to the ground and listen for feedback that maybe somebody's like really annoyed with something, but not necessarily enough to like stick their neck out on a mailing list or that kind of stuff. Because again, that's one of the downsides of a lazy consensus is we just kind of push forward and suggest a thing, and we'll suggest that this is the way we need to do it. And if we don't hear anything, we'll push forward. But I know not everybody is willing necessarily to stick their neck out to hold up something that's going. And a lot of the cases, like our bots and our automation is flexible enough that we can accommodate other situations, other workflows, without necessarily, or explain like, here's how we can adapt your workflow to work with our automation. We can solve those problems in a lot of cases, whereas somebody might just be like, oh yeah, contributor experience and testing are coming in with their army of bots and are going to do all those things, but that's going to really disrupt our workflow. And we're like, no, it'll actually improve it. Like most people who've used our bots have been happy with the bot experience. So yeah, keeping ears to the ground, and like if you hear somebody like complaining about something, kind of getting them in that communication loop and talking with us, because we generally don't bite.
Does it make sense to let everybody in this call or on this call or watching the recording, like if they're in other SIGs, especially larger technical SIGs, to let people know that there's some activity going on. I guess we can always feel free to copy and paste the stuff that Aaron just put into the agenda too. So if anybody else is on any SIG calls, just let the SIGs know that there's some stuff that they should be looking out for from a contributor workflow perspective.
I might even, like Aaron just said, he's going to be talking about it in the community meeting. Cool. I might send out a note as well to the SIG leads list as well, and just let them know, like, hey, we're going to be doing more things. We're trying to like unite the experience across the entire project. And if you have comments, feedback, complaints, please do bring them to us because we're friendly. Yeah.
Awesome. Just write pizza as the subject. Free pizza.
I'll just put pizza emojis and in the subject line and not explain it.
Honestly, go ahead. Honestly, action required. Free pizza. Aaron says, "Yeah, no, exactly." I've done that before and it works. So it's not like. Anything else for any of the Aaron items? Aaron, did we miss any? Oh, well,
he's got one more for the GitHub team.
Yeah, go ahead, Crystal.
And so Aaron's suggesting that we like rename, drop, combine, redo our contributor experience GitHub teams to actually make them useful. And that he's suggesting he wants to do that for SIG testing as well. My feeling on this, we've had a proposal. Let me find the link. It's going to be probably pretty up here. Yeah. I know I've talked about this before in this meeting and requested comments. Okay, I just put it in the meeting notes. So there's an issue that I had opened up, requesting comment about how we structure our GitHub teams, what they're named, what is the kind of base level standard that we expect every SIG to have. Because we used to have this sprawl of like 7 teams that we expected everybody to have, not everybody did. And there'd be times where bots and automation would like expect a team to be there and would ping a team, but that team doesn't exist, all sorts of mess around it. I wanted to kind of standardize on a very small, simple structure of GitHub teams. We are close, but not quite there yet as far as having the automation to define those teams from a repo. But I wanted to have kind of an idea of what the structure, the base structure we have for these GitHub teams that we expect every SIG to have. And then a SIG, if they want to create more teams, if there's more like unique roles or they want to set up their notifications slightly differently, that would be completely up to the SIG. But I had proposed basically having like a core, like a SIG foo team that is just like the SIG itself. SIG foo leads or SIG foo chairs or SIG foo technical leads. I had put in their leads just as like a combination of the chair and technical lead roles, like the leadership of a particular SIG. Because they might have chairs, they might have technical leads, they might have a combination of the two, they might not, depending on their charter. But basically, SIG foo leads, SIG foo PR reviews. So you'd have a specific GitHub team to ping if you need somebody to pick up a PR review. That's what I had suggested. There's some comments on there. If anybody has any other input, that would be great. I think probably my next step would be formalizing that out and actually driving like, hey, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna make sure that your teams are at least structured in this way. And if you still want these other teams, like if you want an API reviews team, or you want a if you want more teams than that, great, you can do that. But we expect every SIG to have these teams and structured like this. And if you don't want the extra teams, then we'll clean them up, and that would be great. So if anybody has any comments on that, I think putting them on the issue would be great. If anybody has any thoughts about scheduling and driving that forward, that's just been one that I've wanted to do, but have not had the cycles to drive forward and talk to people and evangelize and then make happen.
I do feel like if people who are having trouble with GitHub notifications are the people who would complain about this, and they're the people that aren't going to see this. It's kind of a recursive problem. So how do we get to people like Brian Grant, who will absolutely refuse to use these GitHub groups? Period. I mean, I can talk to him, but he's just one of many that has given up on GitHub notifications.
Well, and I think like there's, at least this is just my opinion and my viewpoint, as somebody who gets a lot of GitHub notifications himself and has to manage those. I think everybody kind of has their own system. Some people do them by email and triage them through their email. Tim Hawken had put out to the email list, like, here's my example Gmail rules, and this is how I triage a lot of that stuff through Gmail. Some people use GitHub directly. There's a whole different suite of tools and stuff that you can use to manage those. I think it comes down to everybody will have their own kind of system for dealing with GitHub notifications. You might get to a Brian Grant stage where you just go like, I'm going to black hole everything and I'm not going to listen to GitHub notifications. We do have, like, as was mentioned by George in the chat, we do have a PR dashboard. We have actually, yeah, we have the PROW PR dashboard that I will drop the link out to.
Aaron was making
in there. Yeah, that the one. George has linked it in chat, but I put it in the meeting notes as well. We do have a PR dashboard that you can kind of view your own PRs and which ones are still kind of sort of pending on you and triage that way. There's a lot of different ways to handle those notifications. But I think one of the biggest problems we've had with the GitHub teams is that it's not really transparent. Like it's difficult to join a GitHub team. You can request, there's a button if you're not a member, you can request to join, but I found that the notifications for those are really flaky. Like sometimes I will get a request to join a GitHub team and other times I will not. But I think that problem will go away when we have the Parabolus tool in our setup to be able to manage those from a YAML file. So if somebody wants to join a GitHub team like a PR review team, then they do a pull request into the repo and add their name, and then it gets approved by the SIG, and then they can get those pings, and then they can manage the notifications themselves. Like they'll be subscribed to the notifications and then can manage those however they choose to manage them, whether it's through PR dashboard, whether it's through a third-party tool, Gmail, whatever.
Lots of combo going on in the chat. Does anybody want to say anything discussion point wise? Anything else on this? So Aaron, do you feel like you are settled with, hold on. Whoa. Can I manually remove my SIG teams today?
So I think as a SIG testing chair, you can do whatever your SIG allows you to do. Because I don't think we have firm guidance on mandating you need to have these teams right now. I may double check the documentation on what we're mandating. I personally don't care if you go and remove the teams for SIG testing. I don't feel like I want to mess with contributor experiences teams until we have a defined goal of where we're going. I would like to do that, and I would like to dump our current teams and set them up the way that we want to with a goal. I would really like if there was a volunteer to help drive that forward. I can definitely guide and help, but if somebody wants to drive this forward as far as writing something out to KDev and the SIG leads and be like, hey, here's what we're going to do. Here's what the proposal is. Please leave comments, or we're going to do this in a time box, and just be able to write that up, send it out to the lists, and then manage the time box. Once it's actually done, the clicking to set up, change, deal with the teams, that's the easy part afterwards. It's just making sure that we have like clear consensus from people that their teams are going to be changed in a specific way. So if somebody's like curious, wants to get more information on that, you can even ping me out a band. I would like, if nobody does, I will eventually get to it, but I think that's the approach that I would like to take, at least from that, and I'm open to differing opinions. But yeah, Aaron's basically saying the same kind of thing, where he would like to drive it too, but we're both kind of just time constrained there. But if somebody wants to do that, feel free to ping out a band and we can help set you up. And it would be, if you want to get your name out in front of the community as far as driving this stuff forward, this is a pretty simple way to just kind of manage it and get the time box out and answer the questions as they come in.
So is the goal to come up with a grand plan, like Aaron said there in chat, or is near term it's sufficient to allow SIGs or suggest that SIGs manage their own, or do we want to have this uniform across each of the SIGs?
I would like to have a policy across each of the SIGs as far as like baseline. Like, here's the baseline, and that was what I've got in the issue is like, here's the 3 teams that I am suggesting that every SIG have. And then if a SIG wants more, great. But here's the 3 teams. We'll add the SIG leads or the chairs or the technical leads or whoever they want to be like maintainers of those teams, so they can add and remove people from those teams as necessary and ensure that is kind of ubiquitous across all of our SIGs.
All right. I'm looking in chat and I don't see anything else. Last call for discussion on this. This was a lot, so.
Okay. Yeah, and as I said, if anybody has like questions or wants to maybe get involved with this, feel free to ping out a band, and I'll answer what I can. I would love to get more people involved in some of these things.
You're next. Community members.
Yeah, just want to evangelize here that there's a proposal out to change the requesting membership in the community as well as like the GitHub orgs. That procedure, there's a PR open to change that. Basically, right now it's going through an email list. The email list is not great and it's hard to track, and things kind of get missed as far as like which person is handling a particular thread. So we're going to transition that over to opening a GitHub issue. We have like a GitHub issue template against the Kubernetes org repo. So the proposal is basically changing our official procedures that if somebody wants membership in any of our orgs, like if they want to become a member of the community, or if they are already a member of like one org, but they want to apply for that membership in a different org as well, that they open up a GitHub issue to do that. And then we can kind of track the +1s as well as then track the, which GitHub owner is actually sending the invite. Yeah, we're going to merge that tomorrow if there's no objections.
No
Thoughts,
objections.
questions, comments? Cool.
Hail to
That's it for me.
Woo, woo. Anyway, sorry, I'm pumped about that. All right. Any questions about the new membership process for Christoph? Do it, according to Aaron. Thank you for that valuable comment. All right. So next item on the list, we actually have all three election officials on the line right now. The steering committee elections are coming up. For those that don't know, last year was actually our first ever steering committee election. There was a bootstrap committee, mostly founders, and then they added some more folks on to make a group of 13 people with the intended goal of having 7 eventually for more of a permanent, I guess, structure. Nothing's ever permanent, but more permanent than what the bootstrap committee was. We are starting that process. The hot link in the agenda is to our first kickoff issue. George on the line, Eeyore on the line, and myself are the election officials. We actually pulled the data today for the eligibility members. So there will also be a exception form that will come out. So if you're not necessarily on the eligible list, but believe that you should have a vote and a say in this election, you'll fill out that form, and then we'll keep the process moving from there. But today we will hopefully have the announcement out to, at the very least, KDev, which will be sort of our main channel artery for this kind of communication stuff. And anybody else want to add anything? You or George? I just feel like from a high level perspective. Nothing to add. Okay, cool. And yeah, so this election cycle, we have 3 seats up for grabs, and nomination. We'll do a call for nominations and all kinds of super fun activities. So all of the side political science folks out there, this is the cool stuff, I think. +1 to Eeyore. All right. Any questions about that from a high level? Like I said, you'll see in the issue that this is literally the kickoff. We're planning stuff. Aaron's making a great face.
Are we making note in the election stuff about the fact that I think only one Googler could be elected, and I think one Microsoft person could be elected, and you know what I mean? Like there's some limitations in terms of who can actually get elected.
Yep, all that stuff is documented in the election guide as well as the election process.
But I mean, it may be, is it specific to the election though? Meaning that, like, yes, you can only have X number % from people, but maybe people don't necessarily know that only one Googler could get elected this time. Is it, you know what I mean? Do you see what I'm saying about it being specific to this election?
So you want us to call out that only one Googler can get elected? Do you feel like that would shy other people away from calling for nominations?
I think it would shift people's perspective. Like, for example, as a Googler, I know that if I'm running and you're running, I would much rather have you on it, and I would demur. I wouldn't even run if you were running, because
I don't know how, as an election official, we would like convey that without bias.
I maybe putting makeup of the people who are the seats are for election, or I don't know, just it feels like that's a critical piece of information that people are, if they don't know that, they could, you know, it could change. That has material impact on people's decision to run or not.
I mean, it is in the documentation. Matt, I see you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say it gives people informed knowledge on the situation, which has impacts. Like if a bunch of people are going to run from a company and a bunch of them would say, you know, I'd want to be the second or third person, as Jay said, well, then maybe they'll drop out so that other person would get more votes from their company and throw their weight behind that person because they would rather see that person do it. But it also says, you know what, we're not just going to have an election of, say, people from Google, Microsoft, here, we need other people from other companies. And that could also encourage people to say, you know what, it's not just going to be stacked with there's this many positions, and so it's just going to go to Google, or it's just going to go to Microsoft, or it's just going to go to some of these companies, because we need that diversity. And it lets them know, hey, sign up. It's not just going to go this way, no matter how popular they end up being, because we need that diversity. Kind of, it gives informed disclosure on this.
George, Eeyore, do you want to weigh in? And then Aaron said in chat, I see nothing wrong with refreshing us all on the fact that these cases are accounted for in the rules, but I don't feel a need to play out scenarios. I think the scenarios is kind of what I was hanging on to. Like we can definitely, we can copy and paste stuff out of the rules into the announcement email if that would like call that out. I feel like
the thing here, let me be more specific about what I'm concerned about, is that the affiliation of the Bootstrap members doesn't matter, right? Or does it? Because it's the affiliation of the seven. Okay. Yeah. So if their positions are not being replaced and it's an election of a subset of people and the Bootstrap community members are hanging on to those seats, it's not necessarily obvious. I guess I'm trying to explain something that I'm having a hard time explaining because I haven't had my coffee yet.
That's okay.
It isn't necessarily, somebody's going to have to go in and actually do the math to understand what the implications of the company affiliation are. It's not straightforward. Because the elections are not for the Bootstrap positions, they're for the people who are rolling over.
Well, and I'd say it's kind of tough because at the same time as there is a clause around the max representation that a company can have, we also clearly call out in the rules that there is very limited to no corporate campaigning. We're supposed to be electing people to the steering committee based on their individual contributions to the project, as opposed to electing them because of or in spite of their corporate affiliation. So it's kind of, I don't know, it doesn't really seem clear, at least from my perspective, how much we want to highlight or talk about that, even though it is very true that it is something that will impact the election. If there are multiple people from, a company, Google being one run, but there's also multiple people on the steering committee from Red Hat and Microsoft.
Yeah, I think it's more about people who choose to run or not.
Okay,
because
so what about in the
I'm voicing a concern with this.
What about in the call for nominees copy saying something like telling the nominees that there are certain requirements that they need to read, especially about company affiliation, and that they should read those before they nominate themselves or have someone else nominate them?
Yeah, I think that helps. Anything in that direction helps. It's just I'm just telling you that it's not necessarily super straightforward to understand what the limits are. If you walk into this blind and you don't know, if you haven't been involved, you're really not going to know easily how many people from any given company could be elected. That's all.
Well, that's why George said that's why we have the voter guide. We could add this to the voter guide. I think it's already in the voter's guide. Yeah, maximal representation. Yeah, if it's not in there, then we can just add it in there for sure.
Yeah, and then maybe just put the affiliations of who's in there currently, and then
we have that in there too on the steering committee README, and we're linking to that in the copy of the announcement that's going out today. I mean, the announcement that's going out is going to have 3 major documents attached, and all of the calls. So the call for nominees, the call for membership to vote. So all of that detail is going to be spelled out in there. Matt?
Yeah, so the comments, by the way, just real quick, the comments that Aaron just put up and George referred to, that's what I'm talking about. That is not easy information to know.
If the results of an election, hold on one second, I'm trying to get up here to read it. If the results of an election result in greater than 1/3 representation, the lowest vote getters from any particular company will be removed until representation on the committee is less than 1/3. That's buried in steering. We need to have everything anyone needs in the voter guide. We can't ask people to dig through steering repo, and we are actually putting it in the voter's guide as well as the announcement that's going out today. I mean, I'll open source the announcement if y'all want to see it.
It might be worth somebody coming up with a TLDR, because we're talking about attached documents and digging through it to understand the election process and the implications of what's going on here. And, we have a hard time getting people to read the manual. So what would a TLDR look like? What would something simple that helps people come to the implications? And maybe it doesn't go out as part of the technical process and somebody does it as a separate thing. But I think to have well-informed as best we can, given that people just don't tend to read the docs, is just something to think about.
Yep, and that's the intentions, to have each section have a TLDR. And then each section would also have the related docs that it needs to go with it.
I would just mention that the current process is not really difficult to read entirely, not so many words and letters. So TLDR is useful, but I'm not sure that we should do it because the entire process is important. All the information that we put into the README of the process is important.
Anybody else? All right. And like I said, this is just kicking off the process. We vote, can't remember the date off the top of my head right now, September something, 15th, 19th, something around there. And then we announce first week of October. I think it was like October 4th. Okay, George, so what's the work item here for me to add representation thing to the voter guide? Yes. Yes. And I guess link to the steering committee charter, link to everything that's in the announcements election copy right now, where it says copy under subject, insert link for elections README, insert link for voters guide, insert link for steering committee charter. I guess so all those things will need to go on the voters guide as well. Including the existing steering committee and affiliation, correct. Yep, that's on the steering committee README. Okay, cool. All right. And Christoph, did you have anything?
I was just thinking the only thing that maybe make it clearer is the magic number is 4 right now. There's a 12-seat steering committee. You can't have more than 4 from a company based on the 1/3 representation in this election. So, like, if you have 4, great. If you have 5, then somebody will get bumped off it'll go to the next person because you can't have 5 from one company. So it looks like the only possible companies that could impact would be Google, Red Hat, Microsoft, and Heptio, mathematically.
All right, Eeyore and George, let's talk about this later as far as making sure that this is somehow uber clear without bias or discouraging people to nominate themselves, because that's literally the last thing that I want to do. I mean, I hear the concerns, but if somebody wants to run, they should run. And, if they have the sponsors to run, they should run. All right. And then, let's see, what else do we have on the agenda today? Doodle for Global Time, that went out this week on the mailing list. I think it was August 9th that went out. It looks like we've gotten some pretty good responses. It's been, I think, at least 16 to 20 at this point. I don't have the results in front of me, but I also have not closed the poll. I was thinking of keeping it open for a few more days and then sending out a reminder one more time and saying that we'll discuss on the call next week to see what that looks like. For those that don't know, on the contributor experience mailing list, there was a doodle poll that went out for a global meeting time change. The only change that's going to happen is to 1 out of 4 of our monthly meetings. The other 3 or 4, depending on the month, how many Wednesdays there are. But depending on the month, 3 of those meetings would still stay at this exact time. And then the other 1 would be going to the winner of this doodle poll. Elsie's taking the morning, I'm taking the nighttime specific, and Christoph and G-Rod are going to help us out with if we need it, or come on, obviously, if they would like to. I would encourage everybody, if you can make it to the other time, to please do so that we can be welcoming to other folks globally and hear their concerns and get a feedback loop going on. But let's see. I just want to make sure in chat that no one had any. Okay, good. No questions about this. Any questions, concerns, comments about the doodle? I didn't want to spend too much time on that. I think our main goal here is to make sure that we have a very smooth process with this, and it's not 2 calls, 2 being a call from this time and then a call from another time, and then have different topics. We'd like to try to blend them as much as possible so we can get diversity of opinions on similar issues. All right, last call. Cool. All right, the survey, I'm about to link to that. That also went out on the mailing list this week as well. We are doing our mid-year, very late survey that we said that we would do in our charter. This is questions about how people like our communication platforms and how they like their contributor workflow and just mentoring stuff. So this is the last call for question suggestions. So if you've ever wanted to know anything about, say, 200 Kubernetes contributors or more, and there's a good reason as to why you'd like to know it, please definitely put that on the suggestions. We are refining this pretty much every hour. We've had some great folks come in and edit stuff and poke holes in some of the questions and kind of read it for clarity and things like that, because, you know, we do want folks to make sure they understand how we're asking these questions and kind of why, especially because words can mean multiple things to multiple people. I guess, you know, ask somebody what a service is in Kubernetes and you might get a different response. So just want to make sure that everybody is aware that we are doing last call. We'll send out the final version to everybody to take a look at before we do a Monday send out, but we'll probably do a soft Monday send out, meaning just send a KDev, and then all next week we'll work with CNCF and some other folks to do more of a marketing full-blown push. I was thinking of leaving this open for 2 weeks. I wanted to get everybody else's opinion on this. Any opinions on the length of the survey, or the duration rather? +1. All right. 2 weeks sounds good to me. Cool. All right. And then so that would mean we will have some really awesome data no later than the end of September. And that's cool for us because some of the stuff on here, oh, actually, let me call out one of these questions in particular. One of the questions, I think it was at one point, number 14, note I said at one point, no, I guess I X'd out. But I'm asking pretty much what people think that, what projects we're working on and calling some of them out specifically. Like Christoph, I called out the GitHub management stuff, and we're pretty much asking people what they think is the most important out of the stuff that we're working on is, just so we can kind of get a pulse for priority almost, and that would kind of help us with tasking each other out, especially if we have a few cycles to burn. And things like that, so we know what the community thinks is important and potentially pain points for them. So if there is a project that anybody on this call is working on that is not listed in this question TBD right now, yes, it's actually number 15. If there's a question in here or a project that is not in here that you are working on that you would like validated essentially, please let's get it on here. And it also, it makes our SIG look like we are super busy, because we are, and I know everybody on this call is super busy. So good timing as additional input to KubeCon's Contributor Summit content planning. Exactly. That's why I'm like, let's rush this bad boy out the door. Let's get some data. All right. I'm good on the survey if y'all are. +1s, -1s, hate it, love it. All right. I'll take silence as you just love it to death and you're tickled pink. All right. Next comment, next agenda item is about the mega issue that I set forward for communication and collaboration platform sprawl assessment. I felt so like fintech writing that. I am going to add this to the agenda. But this is essentially doing two things. It's discovery and a little bit more research, so that we can kick things off and decide on things in an educated manner with research, so that we're not just constantly picking off low-hanging fruit, meaning just combining smaller things so we can do kind of a larger move. I know everybody here feels the communication toil that we have. I know everybody feels like we have a lot of noise to signal. So this is important for us, I think, to really work on this as a priority. So the two items that are kicking off, one is this survey, and then the other one is a huge list of communication channels that includes calendars, and collaboration platforms and docs that we have. So this is an inventory of who owns what, when it is, how it is, the audience. I mean, it's just really awesome. I did slap a good first issue on this because I really think that a new contributor, especially not a co-contributor, could come in and help me with a lot of this research and a lot of filling in the holes. And I will happily do so. So I did put that label on there, and that was my first one ever. So thank you, Gwen, and everybody that helped work on the documentation and everything for that one more time. Anybody have any questions about this? Y'all are quiet today. Well, Aaron's mic's broken, so. Jeff said, I'm taking notes. Gwen, what Tim said.
It's late.
Coffee, Jace. All right. Well, I've got nothing else. Does anybody have anything else for total coincidence? My mic being broken equals silence. Anybody else? Last call for agenda items today.
Who did you bribe, Paris?
Who did I bribe?
Yeah, to break Aaron's mic.
No one. I know.
I last minute item that I forgot the agenda. Sure. It's an item from the last week. So everybody who attended this meeting last week could remember that we've shared the new template for Kubernetes slide deck. And my plan was to publish it, to announce it publicly tomorrow at the community meeting and where the Kubernetes dev mailing list. So I made this 1 week time for getting your comments, and I received none of them. So it could be the final call here at this meeting to receive some responses, suggestions, or comments there. If not, I'll go ahead tomorrow with announcing it publicly.
Oops. Aaron has a question for you too. That's a side note unrelated to the slide deck. Anybody have questions for you on the slide deck stuff? All right. How has turnout been on the call to delete GitHub service accounts?
So nobody reached me during this week.
Should we do another?
As Aaron expected, right?
Should we do a thread bump or something?
Yeah, let's do it tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah. It will be, again, exactly 7 days.
George said it just means they didn't use them in the first place.
I had a plan to announce it also during the community meeting last week, but my laptop was discharged exactly at the time when I pressed the unmute button.
All right. Last call. Jay's already left. He's like, forget you all. Like the ghost of Jace's past. All right. Well, it's been a lovely Wednesday. We can all hang out here for 7 more minutes, or you can get your life back. Have an awesome Wednesday. See you next Wednesday at the same time. Bye, y'all. Tim, every time I see your thing when I'm laughing, like I just laugh because you're laughing in your photo, and it just messes me up every time.